Hello, my name is Yunakam and I am a save scummer. I am an absolute scum when it comes to saving in video games. And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea that save scumming is a bad thing doesn't really fit all that much into what exactly save scumming is. So let's talk about what exactly save scumming is, if you're not familiar with the term. The idea is that if you save your game constantly to be able to recover from a mistake, be it minor or major in a video game, then you are perhaps not playing the video game as it was intended to be played. For example, you're not playing XCOM like it was intended to be played. You made a mistake, okay, live with the consequences. Don't save scum, let the game unfold as it would have with your mistake. And if that mistake leads to your inevitable demise, well, then that's your game. That's your game experience. Learn from it, live with it. It's what makes gaming beautiful. Or, and here's my take on the idea, I play the way I want to. The ability to save in video games has been a bit of an adventure, if you could say so. It wasn't a core feature when games first came out. Why would it be? How could it be? You couldn't save in Pong, it didn't make sense. You just had two paddles and a score. Well, technically you could save the score. I mean, it didn't require that many bits to actually keep in memory, but I don't believe that Pong actually had a method to write that to the memory, like to the permanent one. But that's besides the point. Saving a game became a sort of necessity as time went on because people played games differently. It wasn't enough to have just a password sheet that would get your character from level 1 to level 2 to level 5 to level 50 at the end, because across your adventure, depending on the game, you'd maybe not have the exact same character that someone else would have reaching that level. There was no means to pass that customization, that personal experience from one session to another. And as games got longer, this became a problem. Therefore, the save game function was born. But then came the problem of how exactly do you implement it within the constraints that you have. You know why save points exist, right? In video games, why we have map rooms where you save your game, why you can save your game in certain places alone. Why all the enemies respawn when you do so? Why does everything reset except some major events like killing a boss sometimes and your equipment? That's because as gaming evolved, consoles required that some games have the ability to save. And for that, they needed to have a cartridge fitted with a battery and with a memory that could be written to. Neither of these could be all that expensive. You had very little memory that had to be kept chugging along by a small battery. So you couldn't really splurge on the amount of data being saved. Therefore, you had save points. Because what was the point in storing the precise location of the player, of what he did up until that point in that area, of the location of the enemies, of if they're firing on the player or not, or all that stuff, when you can just say player is at save point X and then just store health, items, ammo, and maybe the state of the world in a few bits like boss X is dead, yes, no. It's a more economical process, one that can be done with very limited resources, and one that does actually require that every enemy in the world respawn once you get back into the game, because their existence is not saved. Their fate is unknown to the game, so it just presumes that they're back alive as soon as you go off the screen and then come back. This was the driving force behind the save point system. But as time went on, technology didn't really necessitate it to be like that anymore. Well, on the PC, you kinda never needed it to be like that, which is why in PC games, since the get-go, you could save anywhere. And mind you, having a save system that actually lets you save anywhere is no easy feat, which is why you probably saw that some games had gigantic save files, The Witcher 2 in its release version had save piles so big that people were complaining they didn't have enough space left on the C drive because of it. I was one of those people. They did manage to trim it down, but it was still a big chunk of data. And it needed to be big because it was, it was an open world game, it was an open world-ish game that had a lot of variables, a lot of stuff that it needed to pay attention to. It needed to know those things so that the player's experience could be continuous from one session to another. It didn't restart it. It didn't reset it. And if you really want to go nuts, think about how many first-person shooters have a quick save feature. You can just save mid-battle when the enemy is shooting at you and stuff still works. Things still explode the way they used to in the last version. Bullets still have the same amount even in the enemy's gun. It's a continuous experience. And again, it's not easy to implement because there's a lot of variables that need to be saved. And that fundamentally is what kept the save game option, the save on demand save game option, far away from consoles for a while. When the consoles got hard drives, there was no excuse. Yeah, sure, with a save game cartridge, with that memory stick the PS2 had, sure, yeah, you had a limited amount of memory. You didn't want to just spend it all on a single game, sure. With a hard drive, no excuse. And yet you still had, instead of save points, you had checkpoints which saved for you automatically. They saved your location at a predefined point, one where stuff that's unexpected can't happen, a place where there are no enemies that need to be saved in a certain particular way, one that you can come back to and have the entire level be reset without problems. And yet still not a save function that is controlled by the user. It's something that the developer believed that you would be okay with. And when even that wasn't enough, they just put checkpoints every 2 minutes. There is games with so many checkpoints you just have to wonder, why don't you just let me save when I want to? I just want to save a game, that's it. Let me. But it won't. Or if you do save, you're just gonna be reset back to the last checkpoint. Because the game will not save the enemies, it will not save the progress you did after the checkpoint, it will not save anything else except your location at that checkpoint and your inventory and, what you did before, sometimes. It's an easier thing to do. It's a lazier thing to do. Though again, to be fair, actually making a proper save function does take a lot of work. So if it does take a lot of work, if it does take effort, then why not use it to its fullest potential without being shamed? In arcade games, you had to insert a quarter every time you died just so you could continue from exactly the exact same place, like the exact same screen you died on. You'd even kill all the enemies by respawning sometimes. Then with save points, you'd go back to the save point. Hey, if you missed one, or if you were in a hurry and said, hey, I can just go forward fast enough and kill the boss, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna save at the next point and it's gonna be fine, and the power goes out and oh boy, now I have to redo all the progress, and I didn't save in a while, have I? I just missed all those points because I thought I didn't need to. Yeah, that's bad. You're probably not gonna play that game again for a while until you forget what you did, so it doesn't seem as repetitive. At least in my case, that's my mental mechanism, which is why to this day, because of the save game bug, I never got really too far into Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. Checkpoints, okay, yeah, I can sort of live with them. They're still not what I would like them to be. Namely, the ability to save the game whenever I want to, because it doesn't detract from the experience. Now you may say, being able to save the game whenever I want to is detrimental to something like a horror game or a game where the difficulty is so high that the thought that something may kill you before you get to the next checkpoint is exhilarating. It's something that builds tension. It's what makes the game enjoyable. And I'm gonna say bullcrap. You know what doesn't make the game enjoyable? Having to repeat the exact same section of a game time and time again because something along the way kills you, but by the time you get to it again, you were so frustrated because you had to go through all the stuff before it that it just doesn't make it enjoyable anymore. It makes it a slow slog through stuff you've already been through for the nth time until you just don't enjoy it. You give up. It's not fun, not entertaining, not engaging. It's just a repetition a very dull one, because you've already done this before, time and time again. It's sort of like playing Dust 2 on CSGO for 2000 hours. At some point you have to realize you're insane. You're insane for continuing to do this. But with a manual save game, with a quick save option, you can save whenever you want to. You can save right before the thing that keeps constantly killing you and dealing with just that thing until you beat it, until you conquer it and it alone, and all the stuff that you got through without problems before, but you still had to grudge through it again and again. That's not gonna be a problem for you. That's not gonna annoy the ever-loving shish kebab out of you. But, and here's the magic of the manual save game option, if you don't want to use it, you can choose to not use it. You can choose to never save your game and live on the absolute edge. Like, you kind of honestly should save your game, because we all know that games aren't all that stable. They will on occasion die. They will on occasion have glitches that will cause you to rethink your decision of enabling the permadeath or Iron Man mode option in games where enemies get stuck in the air and you can shoot them, and if you leave the area, you'll fail, even though everybody else is dead and this enemy is surely glitching out. But if you want to save from every encounter to the other, why would that be a problem? Would Return to Castle Wolfenstein be any less of an engaging, exciting first-person shooter if you could save after defeating every Nazi you saw before you? No, because the game lets you save after every Nazi you fight before you. You can save even during your fights. You can save every 2 seconds if you want, because if you save every second, then you really don't progress much, because it takes about half a second to save, then you press W and save again. So the idea is that game for me was highly enjoyable, and I saved constantly. I saved after I reloaded. I saved once. Well, I used to save a lot after I saved to make sure the save game got saved. The tension of playing the game when I had 10 HP left and still had a wave of Nazis in front of me was still palpable, even though I could save at any time. But it just meant that when I do die, I don't have to restart the whole level and lose that tension. I would still be in the moment. I would still be right there, in the thick of it. You could say Save Scumming improved it. But if you want to wear the I don't save scum thing as a badge of honor, sure. There are even games that do that for you. There are games like Severance, The Blade of Darkness, which give you an awesomeness rating depending on how little you actually save your game. But there is no actual punishment involved with saving, there being no enemy respawns. Everything stays the same, and you will not be reset. And if you die, well, you don't respawn to a checkpoint, no, you're just dead, which in my opinion is a much more engaging mechanic than having you respawn somewhere. On a personal level, give me a game over screen and a working, fully functional save feature instead of a checkpoint based system which respawns at them when you die and then respawns everything else too. It just makes things feel quicker, less annoying, more pleasant to actually go through, because you'll only fight against the stuff that killed you, only against the stuff that you have not yet conquered, not yet defeated, not yet mastered. Not everything, not picking up that crate for the 10th billionth time, not punching that urn for the billionth gazillionth time, not talking to an NPC for the, oh boy, if we get into NPC babysitting and save points and checkpoints, then we're gonna be here for a while. And sure, there may be some negative aspects to saving your game at the wrong moment. For example, I once saved my game in Jedi Academy about a half a second before I got run over and killed by a speeder. But thankfully I was a Jedi and it did take me a couple of tries, but I did manage to get out of the way of the speeder in time to actually not die. But that's not something that's relegated to just the manual save game function. Yeah, you can save your game right at the moment where you're basically completely screwed, and if you only use one save slot, yeah, you're gonna restart a game, but don't use one save slot, use many of them. But this is also something that can happen with games that use checkpoints or save points but don't use them well. For example, I don't know, Hawks, which was a game about planes from a couple of years ago, scenario that you had checkpoints in, but some checkpoints would trigger basically after the run-up to the fail condition already happened. For example, you had to escort a big plane with your jet fighters, and after you destroy the enemies, the game would save, but the plane was so beaten up that right after it saved, it exploded. And unless you wanted to restart the entire mission, the only thing you could do was reload from that checkpoint where the plane you were supposed to be guarding was going to explode in 2 seconds, which is something you cannot recover from. But keep in mind, that's something that's built into the game. That's not something that happened because of my choice. That's something the game did, because of an exception that wasn't taken into account. If I had done it with my own hand, yeah, sure, no problem. I have plenty of other save games, individually named ones, with dates and times and hours and locations, and I use them oh so often to get the exact outcome that is perfect for me. So the game that I am playing is being played the way I want it to. And yet some people will call this basically cheating. People who ignore things like every shooter on a console having auto aim to the point where your target will snap onto another player's head in a multiplayer. And that's not some allegation, that's how they're made. You can check it out, like there's videos of developers from, I don't know, Halo 4 or 5 detailing how your target snaps to the head and then has finer aiming around the head area just so you can do headshots, because otherwise you couldn't. That sounds more like cheating than having the ability to save in single player, where the way I play is no one else's business. So what's your take on scum saving? Are you a scum like me? Or are you one of those Puritans that keep telling other people to get good? I look forward to your comments.